It has now been 1,000 days since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the war rages on undiminished. But a new U.S. administration could prove a turning point. The current president, Joe Biden, has granted Ukraine permission to use American weapons to strike deeper into Russia. Here's a look at how the changing U.S. dynamic could play into the hands of the Russians, or how it could benefit Ukrainians.
A buffer zone to be patrolled by European and British troops. Ukraine surrenders territory annexed by Russia for good. Just two of the scenarios that have made the news since Donald Trump won the U.S. presidency again. Trump has a fraught relationship with Ukraine and its president. He was impeached for pressuring Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and his son Hunter. In Kyiv, DW's Ukraine correspondent Nicholas Connolly says that Ukrainians haven't given up hope.
The baggage between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump is real. But some experts here in Kyiv are convinced that Zelensky can still win Trump over. They say that Trump's personality politics and his billionaire backers mean that the US is becoming more like Ukraine and not the other way around. Cutting a deal with a populist like Trump, they say, is what Zelensky knows best.
Trump's also been hostile to NATO, the alliance Ukraine has been desperate to join in order to get binding security guarantees against any future Russian attack.
Ukraine joining NATO was always going to be years down the line, even under Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. After Donald Trump's election win, that prospect seems even further off. In the meantime, the central question is how Europe will react to America likely reducing its support for Ukraine. Will Europe step up and fill the gap left by the US? Or will European capitals decide that they need those resources to protect themselves if America can't be relied on to protect its NATO allies?
If Trump takes a hand in peace negotiations, as he said he would, then the kind of peace will be important. His vice president-elect has pushed the idea of Ukraine giving up territory in exchange for peace with Russia.
Zelensky isn't going to sign away Crimea or other parts of Ukraine that Russia has occupied. Public opinion just isn't going to allow that. But that doesn't mean that Ukraine is going to carry on fighting to regain those territories by force, especially if the 80% or so of Ukraine's territory that Kyiv controls is protected by Western guarantees. The issue of Crimea and of other parts of occupied Ukraine could be parked to be resolved sometime down the line.
For Ukrainians, only those security guarantees will mean a lasting peace. If the front lines are simply frozen, a pause in fighting, like the one that followed Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, the repercussions could be dire for Ukrainian society.
Without binding Western security guarantees, many here in Ukraine are convinced that a new Russian invasion would just be a matter of time. Putin, they say, hasn't given up on his goal of controlling all of this country. The next time around, Western countries might well be too busy with their own problems to come to Kyiv's aid. If this war is merely paused and Ukraine finds itself without committed allies, the future looks bleak. In that scenario, millions of Ukrainians are expected to vote with their feet and leave rather than risk losing everything yet again.
In the meantime, the Biden administration has tried to Trump-proof much of the aid earmarked for Ukraine, making sure it's sent before the new administration takes office.
Now let's dig a little deeper into the decision-making process in the U.S. Pablo Foley. Elias, Pablo, 1,000 days of war, what's now changed when it comes to supporting Ukraine?
Well, as we know, President Zelensky of Ukraine has been asking for this for many, many months, to say the least. And officials in Washington have been saying that the turnaround came from Biden basically because of this deployment of North Korean troops in the Kursk region, and also fears that Russia and Russian troops could actually overwhelm Ukrainian troops in the Kursk region and further weaken Ukraine at a time where they've been really asking for the US to really boost their help to Ukraine. There's been this huge concern and reluctance in Washington to supply weapons like these long-range missiles to Ukraine over fears of an escalation which President Putin has been warning about time and time again. What it appears has happened now in Washington is that they're essentially saying that those threats from Putin are overblown. What's going to happen now with these weapons that Ukraine is going to be supplied with is that they can actually go further into Russian territory. They can go deeper into Russian territory. Also, I should note that there was this recent US intelligence assessment which warned that any escalation would result or could result in Russian troops or spy agencies essentially attacking the US or, say, European allies. But like I said, Washington has deemed those to be overblown. And also what we can't forget as well is that back in May, President Biden also began to ease restrictions on US weapons, US-supplied weapons being used in Russian territory with the use of these HIMARS rockets. Now, they're not long-range missiles or rockets. They can only go around 80 kilometres. So that would actually just be in an area that would be close to Ukraine, so just across the border.
In the report, we also heard that the Biden administration is trying to Trump-proof their decisions. Has the Trump camp reacted to this decision?
They certainly have, and it's been pretty furious. His son, Donald Trump Jr., has responded very angrily. Hardline Republicans have also responded. They have basically accused President Biden of trying to spark World War III just before Donald Trump takes office in January. Now, we can't forget that President Trump has said that he's going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. He's given no details of how he would go about doing that. And he's also been questioning the US's supply of billions of dollars to Ukraine, something that he's not happy with. And just to give you one brief note from Mike Waltz, that's Trump's choice to be National Security Advisor, he said it's another step up the escalation ladder and nobody knows where this is going. Trump has not spoken publicly yet. He's been remarkably quiet, but we can sort of decipher from what we're hearing from his son and from Mike Waltz that he's not happy either.
Pablo Foley, Elias there. Thank you very much, Pablo.